Welcome to Mediumship Sparks. I'm Noelle Dean, intuitive medium, licensed therapist, and your host. I am endlessly amazed by how Spirit reaches out to us, supports us, and loves us, sometimes in the most surprising and unexpected ways. If, like me, you're drawn to those sparks of insight that bring you greater peace, healing, flow, and just make everything make more sense, whether you're finding us for the first time or we have already shared this space, I'm so happy you're here. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome to Mediumship Sparks. So here's my one breath disclaimer. The information presented on the podcast is educational in nature and is provided only as general information and is not medical or psychological advice, nor is it a substitute for seeking licensed healthcare services. I was thinking about the subject for today's podcast and wasn't quite sure because it's a subject that I really struggle with. And then I kept hearing the song by Don Henley called Forgiveness, and I realized, okay, there's a little positive reinforcement. The reason forgiveness is on my mind is because I'm feeling acutely aware of, technically speaking, sucking at it. And I've been sitting with why, and I've had a lot of good reasons for it. Like, it's a learned behavior, and it is very much embedded in parts of my family's culture and mindset. As my Aunt Sandy would say, I came by it honestly because I learned that behavior, but I'm 57. I could have unlearned it certainly by now, but I haven't yet. I was in a doctor's appointment yesterday with a doctor I'm super excited to interview on the podcast at some point so you could meet Dr. Keith. He's an amazing doctor, chiropractor, but I call him a magician. Anyway, the magician was working on me and he uses a lot of intuition. And what he picked up on was that I was all over the place emotionally and energetically. He was right. I have had a lot on my mind, not like current things, but old stuff. I think one of the ways that I avoid, you may be able to relate to, fixate might be a strong word, but fixate on things that happened a long time ago. And I have to recognize at some point, I'm complaining in my head about X that hasn't happened in 10 years. So I must be upset about something that I'm just trying to not think about. The word coming to me right now is that it's a placeholder. I guess I want to relate to myself like somebody who just gets on with things and doesn't, I wouldn't say doesn't dwell in the past because that wouldn't be true at all. We can't get away from our past. I want to make a joke about past lives that we still can't get away from, the remnants of those lives at times. A lot of us really do strive to be growing and seeking to be not just the best version of ourselves, but maybe another way to look at it that kind of fights off a little bit of like the positivity or maybe even toxic positivity that feels like I want to be the best version of myself is just to say, I want frickin' peace, like between my ears. I would love to, whether I'm upset about something I'm trying to avoid or not, to not have crap in my head that happened a long time ago or even last week. I want to really be able to let things go, but I genuinely don't know how to really do that for some things. There are plenty of things that I have. I struggle with it, and I know that there's a price to pay for that. And why I brought up Dr. Keith is that as he's finishing up working on me, he was noticing that all this stuff had been stirred up and I was a bit all over the place. And then he said something about forgiveness and that my lower chakras or the energy of my body was stuck. A lot of it was stuck. And it was because I was stuck, because I was stuck in not forgiving. That might seem really obvious, and maybe it is to some. We have to hear things a whole bunch of times sometimes to really have it sink in. I believe that the universe does conspire for our good, although it can be freaking painful how we get helped or how we learn our lessons. And there is something about being stuck, owning being stuck. And I guess there are times I just want the magic pill or the magic formula or Dr. Keith to do some energetic something to me that's going to tweak this and that. And then all that stuff will just magically melt away because it's a lot and it feels very deeply embedded because I've thought about these things hundreds and hundreds of times. We all know there are habits of thinking, habits, patterns. That's part of how we learn to relate to the world is the habit of our thinking about who we are, who we're not, who other people are, who they're not, and that kind of thing. What I think happens for me is that I have been a people pleaser as well as an avoider. Strange combination, maybe. And it occurs to me that the best way, I'm not saying this is right, and I know it's not, but I'm just saying I think this is where it's come from, is it seems like the best way to set boundaries is to stay angry at people. It sounds stupid coming out of my mouth in a way, maybe not stupid, but very undeveloped, let's say. Because anger, as we know the saying, it's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. We're doing it to ourselves, we're harming ourselves. But when you stay angry at somebody, it's easy to remember to set boundaries. And unfortunately for me, I'm really good at doing that. It's not a lot of people and it's not under every circumstance, but when it feels like something is saying it's deliberate is maybe an overstatement, but when it seems like it's deliberate that somebody doesn't care about hurting us, I find those the hardest ones to forgive. And maybe rightfully, but doesn't really matter. Here I am still being the one who's angry and obviously blocking myself from healing and being able to connect spiritually in some of the ways I really value. I think there's also some heavy self-judgment about being this like unevolved person who is still angry about stuff. I think the evolved version is having straight conversations and or because that could be, but it's more having a straight conversation with ourselves and finding the boundaries that seem appropriate for us. I remember a few algorithm days around boundaries on Instagram. Some things just hit you at that right moment. There was one or two that mentioned boundaries are really for ourselves, like set the boundaries for us. Putting boundaries on other people is trying to control their behavior and never a good idea. So I was sitting with who can come and help me have this conversation and putting it out to the universe. The person who came to mind was Jesus. He's the only one. When I asked before I started the recording who is joining me, because I felt major chills, it's time to record. What I was told was that it would be the Christ consciousness. Now, I have not connected with the Christ consciousness consciously before, but it feels very right to do that about this subject. There are some good practical questions that we want to get answered, as well as to get some good practical advice. Are we ready? Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So now you may or may not be aware of the idea of Christ consciousness. I'm not very well versed in it. I should just leave it at that. I'm not. The visual that just came to me was of seeing like the First Supper version of Jesus. I think he's wearing a white robe in that painting, but I'm seeing him in a white robe and I'm seeing his long hair and his full beard and his hair color. Quite red looking. I just had the message about him schooling us. And then I'm seeing him with a whiteboard, which is a common visual that I get when like a guide is going to spell something out for me. Anyway, and he wrote, it's the School of Life's Hard Knocks. So first, can you start with giving us some sense of what is really meant by the Christ consciousness in how you are appearing to contribute to our podcast today? He's being funny. He said, I really don't even know how it started. I was hearing Don Henley's Forgiveness before, and now I'm hearing little Simon and Garfunkel at the beginning of the day that I died a long time ago. Sorry. So he's bringing humor and levity, which I'm sure you can appreciate as much as I do. Okay. He's saying there was an opening or a void to support people's ever-growing need for consciousness. And there was a touchstone involved that helped people radiate love. I can feel some emotion around that coming in also. Groundedness and goodness of love. And he's saying, so he started to spread the love. He's showing it a little bit like I was going to say peanut butter, but now it's looking like marshmallow fluff. Long, long time ago, Simon and Garfunkel. He's saying, and then we remembered that people are stubborn. And he is saying the making people feel watched wasn't my original idea. And he's saying, but it's worked to trap people into thinking and believing that they better be watchful over themselves. He's saying that wasn't the idea behind religion per se. He's offering to have a faithful discussion with anyone interested in linking with him about that. Okay. So I guess if you want to connect with him more about that, he's providing an open invitation for you to do that. He's showing a visual. It may not be what you look like, but it's an example of another person. So it's not directed at me. Sitting at a table with their hands, looks like their hands on the table and their eyes are closed and they look very quiet and open and receptive and asking questions and seeing whatever feels in their body to come. So there you go. There's your open invitation. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to add to that? He's saying this is like a body of artwork. Like there's a mosaic, there's oil paintings, and it all comes together in the form of a museum, like an art museum. And he's saying that's the idea of a consciousness, or like the ego collective, another group I've connected with before. It's a smattering or a mosaic of many mindsets brought together under one purpose. And there's a divine purpose in doing all of it, of course, he's saying. Okay. I feel like I'm supposed to ask this. So you were invited to participate in this conversation. Okay, I'm seeing I wanted to volunteer, not to be voluntold. He's saying your listenership deserves good answers. And here we are providing it. Anything else about that? No? Thank you. Okay. So I guess I was thinking about this subject the other day, and a few ideas came to me. There's a saying that to forgive is divine. Do you believe that? No. He's saying to forgive is an act of ascension. It's moving beyond what the human body, brain, and thoughts are willing to recapture over and over for the sake of devaluing anyone's behaviors, including theirs. Can you say more about that, please? Yes, I can. That we can know so many things, but forgiveness in a pure heart is a tender act because you risk being vulnerable to anyone over and over again. And it's not the point of divine intervention or having a divine heart to be run over. There's some sort of like awareness of a train when he's saying run over. Oh, okay, sorry. Splattered run over. He says we believe people have faith in other people's abilities, make and keep promises, to be one in integrity with their words and commitments. And then there's all kinds of smatterings of everything in between. And we don't care how much or how little. You can put in less effort if you like, but there's growth in supporting people past their own limitations. And we see that as a form of love for growth and development of both peoples. It sounds like what you're saying is you're describing people like talking things out to resolve them, and that both people learn and grow from that. Is that what you're, yeah. So the blanket forgiveness that I think we're sold on at times, as if it's a belief of on about the Christ consciousness, but that is how Jesus walked. And I'm not pretending to know a whole lot about that because I don't. But as spiritual people, as you, my listener, and I are, I'm sure there's got to be some, at least small part of us that may be shoulding on ourselves, that if we're really spiritual people, that we should easily be able to forgive. Or even if it's not easy, that we just do it and it doesn't really matter what's happening on the side of the other person. And he's saying something about blanket forgiveness without apologies is being suckered back into the arena where the lion or the bull is going to stab you all over again. Oh, and then he shows a visual of a woman, actually, I think it's me, in an arena with a bull. And I'm seeing myself and I'm standing very firmly. I have my hand up and I can see that it's like on the bull's forehead, right between his horns. And he's not moving. He's not getting closer to me. I don't see myself struggling. In fact, I see myself smiling and looking pretty calm and confident in this visual. He's saying love surpasses the need to argue with ourselves about what is right and wrong. Am I right and that person is wrong, or were they right and I'm wrong? He's saying part of forgiveness is it doesn't matter. Two human beings make mistakes together. There's no specific right and wrong person in a situation. He's saying in common arguments. And he's saying lest someone like truly violates the bodily space of another. He's saying that might seem like unforgiveness is justified. But there were also, and I'm seeing like train tracks that go back way past where I can see. And he's giving me the feeling of there's this very long history that even if I don't know why that person like ran me over as the train, I can see that their actions or what's underneath the ground of their actions is from a long time ago. He's saying it's also less personal in that way. He's saying, which feels sucky to you if you feel victim of someone else's actions. I have the little voice in my head about what about like really bad situations like empath alert, like when somebody gets attacked or like really violated in some kind of way, things that really do commonly happen around the world. But I feel like the focus is more on everyday interactions with people that we have relationships with, like friendships, family relationships, could be romantic as well. I just want to share my awareness so I'm not coming across as insensitive about those more extreme situations. It feels like we're focusing on the more common stuff. Yeah, he's agreeing with that. Okay, thank you. Really? Oh my goodness, he just totally cursed. Something like, let's not get it twisted if somebody does some really effed up shit to somebody. Not that it's a means for or a grounds for a lack or for less forgiveness, but it's a different kind of process. And he's talking about where people can work things out potentially. Yeah, much more low key situations. But he's reminding me of a relationship that I have where you know somebody for a long time and there can get to be a lot of like murky, dirty, polluted water under the bridge of the relationship. And those things can really build up. And he's bringing up the word honesty, which, yeah, I can get that without honesty, that's been a big weakness of mine, if I'm being really honest, is I think for a very long time I've been afraid to be really honest. I had the understanding that people didn't really want to hear the truth about their behavior or about their impact on me. So I would pretend everything was okay, even though at times I would be seething or adding up, tallying the score of how crappy they are, whatever that is. Okay. What would you say from the Christ consciousness perspective is the expectation of just a regular person or a spiritual person to carry themselves with respectability to how they relate to other human beings and how they deal with forgiveness. And I just want to remind my listener that I'm also being given the questions to ask. So sorry for the grammar. I think that as spiritual people, I think some people feel the weight, the heavier weight of I should be beyond this or more elevated and have an easier time letting things go. And I immediately see the word bullshit. And he's saying we are very proud as human beings to carry our weights and measures of other human beings with or without judgments all the time. So let's not pretend because you have greater spiritual awareness or beliefs that are a stronger part of your life than maybe someone else's, that there's some moral obligation to be different or better than, because that's a judgment also. Like I need to be better than the average ordinary person who isn't, quote, spiritual. Totally get that. I never thought of it that way. Thank you for bringing that up. I feel relieved already. Not really, but a little bit actually, because there is that. And I would assert that people with other strong faith and beliefs feel a lot of that pressure too, not just spiritual people, of course, religious as well. It sounds like you were bringing up the idea of talking things out with somebody, sharing the truth with them, that both people potentially can grow from a situation like that. What about, let's say, in a situation maybe like mine, where something's gone on for a long time, or maybe your whole life? A relationship has been, in a way, feels damaging or really unhealthy. So he's bringing up, is the other person inept in having like healthy boundaries or more open communication with you, or to be less selfish about their thoughts and feelings, like overtaking my own, that their thoughts and feelings are presented in a way that they are, he's saying, grander than mine. He's bringing it back to somebody being an inept person in having healthy boundaries or a more balanced relationship, and looking at capabilities, people's capabilities. He's going to use me as an example. He's saying about me. So let's say that you can't pretend that you forgive somebody. Like it's really obvious that I'm not forgiving somebody to the person I'm not forgiving. Yes. He's saying from their perspective, the view of me could be that I'm an inept person in the area of forgiveness and compassion and self-compassion, because I could not bring myself to communicate better or to be more authentic about the feelings that were truly in my heart. And then I harbor resentment for many years. So, from this other person's perspective that I have a problem with, they could see she's inept in having more ability to cope with this better or in a more grown up kind of way. And he's saying not like a judgment about that, like that I'm being necessarily immature, but, and I don't know how you relate to the word inept. It's not a common word that we use these days. And it can sound a little, he's saying like harsh or insulting, but obviously he's not meaning it that way. He's saying, but it's communicating a message. He's saying we all have strengths and weaknesses. And to be prideful about your weakness is to say, well, how can I be inept about this? I'm a fully grown adult or something like that. And he's again bringing up that's utter bullshit, that we all have these areas of growth that we came here to not perfect, but hone. Oh, that's so cool. And then he's showing, I don't know what it's called, but somebody who is sharpening a knife and they've got that big leather thing and they're moving that like a big knife, like back and forth, like honing the knife. That's what he's showing as this practice and exercise of growth and developing ourselves as these more fully expressed human beings. I guess I still am having some shame about how I think about these situations. And he's saying there's no need for shame or guilt. It's a straight conversation with yourself. You can own that you've been inept in these areas. And he's saying to Noelle and for others, it's not a source of shame. You came here to learn things. Why be mad you haven't mastered it yet? You're not supposed to master everything. And then he's bringing up, you've mastered tomato sauce. That was a great feat, making tomato sauce. Obviously, he's talking about you because my tomato sauce is not that great. Hopefully, yours is. He's saying you're not meant to be the greatest at all these aspects of relationships. They're hard and difficult for others as well. He's saying, but you have to do your best and feel proud that you can do your best. He's saying, not prideful, but acknowledging the effort. Even if it sucks completely, you should try to feel at least a little good about making the effort to do things for the better good for everyone, including yourself. And he's saying it's bullshit about putting everyone else first. He's saying we all have to sit at the table. We all have to be fed. You may be the one who cooked the meal, but there needs to be food for you also. He's showing somebody who cooked a meal and sat with everybody when it was time to eat. Now I'm hearing another part of that song. I'm learning to live without you. So here's another question for you is there are sayings like turn the other cheek. I'm sure there's many more that imply that kind of situation. I'm feeling reminded of their relationships that go, I'm seeing the word sourly, and we're no longer in those relationships, but then there are family members and let's say, I don't know, neighbors or even friends or people that live in your heart like family or live in your life like family, meaning people that you're related to or have a connection with, and not like you have no choice because we do, but it's like an inescapable connection is the word I'm getting, an inescapable connection. And he's showing even people who have an inescapable connection but choose not to speak to each other or to not interact very much or to just be polite and cordial to each other. He's saying that's the least option. The best is, and he's showing me somebody that I can have a hard time with. The visual that he's showing is, I want to say I have a bit of a smirk on my face in this visual, but it's not like a dickish smirk, but it's like I'm expecting that person. It feels weird because I'm feeling judgy as I'm seeing this visual. So I may not be picking up on this accurately because I don't think that's what you mean. Thank you. He's saying to have good humor about the habits of this other person. It's not that they're trying to be dickish in their own way. They're just, he says that they're just, it's their turn to try being themselves. And, oh, and he's saying, and if you feel hurt by that, too bad, boo hoo. It's a little harsh there. Then he's giving the visual of being with somebody that it's predictable that a conversation, let's say, is going to go a particular kind of way. And you could sit there and roll your eyes that it's going to go that way, which seems like the least evolution based way of looking at it. He's also showing removing yourself from the situation, like in a positive way, in a self-affirming kind of way. I know I'm just going to get triggered by this, and I don't want to be mad or hateful towards that person or triggered for the next 3 months until I see them again at the next family barbecue. So the most compassionate thing is to remove yourself. And he's bringing up about boundaries and being stuck. And when you have an awareness of boundaries, you're never fully stuck. He's saying that a boundary could also be how you focus your ears in a conversation. And he's bringing up about a mindset shift. The example he's showing me is having compassion for the person that I'm interacting with instead of just feeling that they are thoughtless or overly self-centered, let's say, which is my go-to negative thought about the person that I have in mind right now. He's saying I could look at them speaking from a place of hurt when they talk to me. because of what I represent or symbolize in their lives. He's saying, and that could be a more grounded foundation from which I relate to them, where there's self compassion because I'm dealing with a difficult situation or a difficult character. He's saying, but I'm bringing so much more compassion, like it'd be hard to get mad at them. Yeah, no, that's very true. So that's a beautiful tip right there. Changing our filter for the other person. He's also showing in that moment. So let's say you attempt that, and however it goes, maybe it goes great for that other person. Maybe you end up hugging at the end and it's really positive. But what he's showing is that after that interaction, you have this moment with yourself where you get to feel more grounded in the reality of love giving because you were offering to come from a place of peace rather than a lack of forgiveness or some kind of bad intent, like about to roll your eyes. Here we go again. Crappy thoughts, he's saying. Yeah, I could see how that would help. And look, I'm with you on this. I have this dilemma. I feel like I'm supposed to share about this with a family member that I've gotten close with in the last few years, but never was really close with before. I can relate to that person as this, I'm dealing with like version 4.0 of them, but versions 1 through 3, it's hard to not be mad at times. And it feels very weird. And maybe you can relate to this, where let's say a cousin is coming to mind, a cousin who maybe when you were kids, you were competitive and fought and argued, and maybe they were jerky. And now they're great, but maybe there's a lot of, again, dirty, polluted water. I'm seeing like toys and stuff in the water. It's filthy water, like nasty stuff under the bridge. And he's bringing up the word perseverate, which is a therapy term, but it's really just going over and over the same thing, not necessarily obsessively, but reminding yourself again and again of the same situation. So it's hard to let go. This is for you. He's showing you have a conversation with them. Everybody's getting along and everything is fine. In the visual that he's showing me, is it this other person, this cousin of yours that we're using as this example, is somebody who at least at times you can have this kind of sound conversation with. And there's this like sort of acknowledgement in that same space that not everybody is like that. Not everybody is a sound space that you can come to and clear ideas from the past about, like even in a laughing kind of way. He's showing saying something that like communicates feelings from the past, but isn't blaming, isn't accusatory. Can you give me an example? So his example is saying something like, I used to think you were such a major dick. Sorry, using a lot of genital language today. Anyway, he's showing the example of you saying this to your cousin. You really would say that? Okay, he's saying yes. Or your version of that. Acknowledging that impression that you used to have, and then saying, and then I realized how much you were actually really struggling academically and with your family. And, huh. And now there's owning something like, and I'm sorry I wasn't the best friend you needed me to be back then. And I hope we have a better chance now to have that kind of unconditional support between us because I can really use that from you sometimes. And I would really love to give it to you when you need it also. Yeah. Now, what about when it's somebody that you really can't have that kind of conversation with because it would be very triggering, or at least you think it would be very triggering? He's showing you having that conversation. He's using you as an example this time. He's showing you having that conversation, but actually like in your head with that person. I'm also seeing, it feels a bit like you being in a dream state and saying that to that person. He's commenting like how people do ho'oponopono. It's a, I'm going to make this up. I think it's a Hawaiian ritual about forgiving, and it's these 4 lines that people say over and over, and it does help release a lot of energy that they have around somebody that they have like resentments towards. And it seems like the power of it is that it releases energy on both sides. And he's saying without that, you can remain captive, as can others. He's suggesting you can meditate on it, you can direct that kind of positive energy towards that other person when you're really looking to have a beautiful connection with them. It's not to be concise about making them wrong or how wrong they were. He's saying you can acknowledge, okay, that was 25 years ago. I think it's time for me to forgive and let this go because it's not happening anymore. And since it is not happening anymore, we have both grown past this chapter in our lives and in our connection and our commitment in our relationship. And I'm so grateful for that. So thank you for sticking with me to have allowed that growth and development to occur. And he's also reminding us that there are things that we do or have done to other people that we're not aware of because they're not telling us either. Until we have our life review, we're not going to know the impact that we have on the people in our lives. Not really. People will acknowledge us at times, but as we're hanging on to these things, other people are too. He's bringing up the idea of forgiving people their trespasses as we hope they forgive us for ours. He's saying, again, there's a lot of self-compassion as well as other compassion implied in that, which is priceless and very valued spiritually, energetically. He's bringing up the idea of healing and encouraging us to move that kind of energy through our bodies. He's even asking for healing and forgiveness energy to come through us and taking some of that almost like smoggy, foggy looking energy with it and bringing that down into the earth and having an intention of release and forgiveness. I think that one's my favorite so far. Okay. What about when those things that happened in the past are still occurring? So it's not over. He's reminding me of seeing that person from that place of pain through which they're relating to the world, and I just happen to be standing there. He's commenting about depersonalizing it. Like a street lamp could be standing here with the role of friend or whatever family role is happening that I am fulfilling. And he's saying in the end, it doesn't matter because we're all relating to each other and our own stuff as best we can. He's bringing it around to how we feel about ourselves. He's commenting that you can say the same thing about yourself. Are you still doing that behavior or those sets of behaviors? Yes, that's true. You still are at times, but have you made some growth? Have you been in the process of development of your soul or your soul's contracts or your personality traits and characteristics and character that you wouldn't intrude upon somebody's privacy the way you did when you were younger, or you wouldn't leave yourself out there hanging in the way that you at one time would have without even thinking about it. He's commenting about how we can learn to trust ourselves over time, but we have to put in some effort. And then we have to be willing to acknowledge that some effort is meaningful and it's not about perfection. I don't even know why I'm using the word perfection. That's his word that he brought it in. But I should probably just acknowledge that in the back of my mind, I think a lot of us use that phrase like, well, I'm not perfect, but as if there's any delusion by anybody that any of us are. But actually, there is. Don't we look at some people like they manage themselves in a way that, I don't know, we're not seeing their gaping flaws. He was bringing it back to us in how we relate to ourselves. And I couldn't agree more. The idea of having self-compassion and seeing our progress. Seeing our progress. I don't think I was a great therapist when I worked in a group home as a therapist. Like I didn't have great skills. I just didn't. I really tried to be therapeutic. I had whatever skills I had at the time, but I think I was really super good at seeing kids from a place of unconditional love and seeing their progress and seeing little things about them and what they're doing or not doing or doing differently. That's a sign of progress and sharing it with them, helping them feel seen and noticed in positive ways. That feels really prominent in this moment. He's asking, can I identify as someone who can let go of things? And he's also reminding us that sometimes it can become how we identify ourselves is in relation to other people. And so changing those dynamics can feel a little off or like having to recalibrate. Thank you. He's saying to reestablish boundaries. Thank you. Much better said. He's commenting that it starts with how you speak to yourself in your own head. He's reminding me that maybe it was a couple of months ago, I was journaling and it felt very impressed upon me that I should start including something positive about myself to every day that I journaled. And I did do that for a little while, and it was a little bit strange, but it was really nice. He's commenting having a better relationship with yourself also brings in peace and lowers the intensity of some of those conflicts. Because if you're in a good place with self-love, you're not as likely to abandon yourself to get upset about somebody else's mischief. That if they're misbehaving in some kind of way related to me, I can leave. And if I'm really having self-compassion and self-advocacy and trying to be as unconditionally loving as I would like to think that I can be, going back to removing ourselves or taking off early or recognizing this was a terrible idea. I think it's time for me to go home. And then he's saying, and reward yourself. He's showing taking a hot bath or sitting and reading, doing something that kind of brings down the upset. Even reading a book about something of interest that can bring about some additional inspiration. Thanks. Is there anything else you want to share about this? He says he feels like he said a mouthful. We've covered a lot of good territory. I want to acknowledge and appreciate the Christ consciousness for supporting us to have this conversation and for bringing us some really, sorry, not my word, swell ideas of how to, he's saying, to not mistake our past for also having to be our future. That's a good one. Okay. Thank you to the Christ consciousness for joining us today and contributing to our conversation. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. Thank you for spending this time with me on Mediumship Sparks. I truly believe that with mediumship, the only real limit is our imagination. If this podcast speaks to you, please rate and subscribe. If it could be useful to someone you care about, please share it. If you're interested in a reading or getting some support to navigate the spiritual path you're on or the one you want to be on, I offer a free consultation to discuss what you're looking for and how I can help. Learn more about my readings and classes at connectingwithnoelle.com. Subscribe on YouTube, Connecting with Noelle, for helpful videos and video podcast episodes. Take good care of yourself, and I look forward to being with you again soon.